Hello! Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this Sunday afternoon. I'm Paula Nowak with Canine Country Academy, and joining me is Jill Marie O'Brien from the NACSW, or the National Association of Canine Scent Work. So many people get those acronyms all, mishmashed. Today, we're going to be talking about the Shelter Dog Project, which I think is amazing, and I honestly don't know a whole lot about it today either, so I'm going to learn along with everyone else. And I want to let everyone know you guys can ask questions. This is a great opportunity to learn more about this program, how it can help dogs in rescues and shelters, and even our own dogs, right? Because this is not just for those guys, but this is a specific program to help dogs that don't have homes and to make them more successful and enrich their lives. So I thought we would start. Jo Marie has no idea what I'm going to ask, right? So I'm just going to grill her.
Oh, no.
I wanted to start because I know a little bit of history, obviously, from our relationships in the past, but I thought the rest of the audience might not know how you got started in scent work and why this is so close to your heart. So if you don't mind sharing just a few minutes of, where you started with this.
So it goes back. I've been working with dogs. I just saw something pop up on one of my other accounts, and it said 32 years. So that kind of freaked me out a little bit.
That was because you started when you were like 2. So
yeah, that's exactly it. Absolutely. I was 2. But I was working at a large, there's my son. Hi, son. Large shelter here in the Los Angeles area. And there he goes with his hockey stick. Sorry, everybody. I can't access it at my office at the moment. So, anywho, sorry, he distracted me. I'm so easily distracted. I'm like a 12-year-old myself. So, yeah. So I was working for a large city animal shelter here in Los Angeles, and I've been there a while, along with all the other dog stuff that I'd done throughout the years. And was running, working a narcotics canine as well, and that's how I connected with Ron Gaunt and through Amy Hero, who is volunteering and working at the shelter with me. And that's how we sort of all initially connected. But I have had many years of working with dogs, especially dogs that have had broken relationships and some behavior issues. And that was kind of my thing for a long time. And having worked dogs in another sort of completely separate parallel life, you see how much benefit it has. And so it just became like, well, why aren't we applying some of this stuff to dogs we have in the shelter? It's easy to do, generally speaking. It doesn't require a lot of training history and training chops in the sense of like you don't have to have perfect timing. You don't have any of that. We can work with volunteers that are maybe not professional dog trainers and dogs that have had minimal learning history and actually just jump right in and start working with them pretty quickly. And we've seen, a lot of really some positive results and a lot of really good feedback that we're getting, as the years are going on. So that's kind of a rough outline of how it all started. And it was like, well, this is something the dogs really love. Why aren't we doing it with shelter dogs? And that's kind of how it came about, because I was obviously running a behavior, not obviously, but a behavior and training department as well. So kind of the two worlds meshed together.
And that's awesome. And that's why we get to do so much fun with our dogs today.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's fun for me. I mean, I love it. I get to stay involved with shelter dogs and still helping shelter dogs and taking something I love, which is scent work and, how the dogs operate and, kind of put the two things together. So it's awesome.
It's a win-win for everyone.
It is, exactly.
So, what are some of the things that you saw in a shelter before really nose work was involved that, nose work was kind of resolved or eliminated for these dogs that are just sitting in these kennels? What are some problems that you saw?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for dogs that are kept in sort of these confined artificial environments is a lack of an ability to really, in a more healthful, productive way, display normal doggy behaviors, normal activities. Just like in our home lives, they're sort of kind of forced to do everything that makes us happy as human beings, and which sometimes suppresses everything that's doggy about them. So using the canine nose work model, and I'm specifically talking about the canine nose work model, not just generic scent work, which really allows the individual dog to have a little bit more autonomy and some free choice, especially in the foundational phases.
Right.
That really seems to be this missing piece for a lot of dogs that are in the shelter. They don't really have a lot of that. And same with a lot of our dogs at home that are kind of having to acquiesce to all of our, like, everything dogs do. It's like, oh, that's gross, stop it, get out of the trash, knock it off. So this is an opportunity for them to just kind of be dogs in a mutually beneficial way.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to encourage everyone, as we're having this Facebook Live and even after, to post any questions about this program, because we want to make sure this is interactive, not just Jill and I getting to catch up and learn about new things.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we get to see you in a couple of months in person to actually implement this and talk about it, with some shelter and rescue people. So this is also something good for rescue groups. And do you see this implementing it in like homes, or how do rescue groups really take this and run with it?
I've seen a few different models be utilized. One is obviously an interactive activity between the volunteers within an actual brick and mortar shelter facility and some of the dogs in the shelter. Some rescue groups have used it to get their foster parents together in a fun activity that is not about doing obedience or control, but something fun to bring them together, and they get to see and put their eyes on the dogs and see the dogs in a more organic way, so they can kind of evaluate. And then, of course, in the home, it's a great way to just burn off some mental and physical energy in a dog. And, 10 minutes of, dog sniffing around and, kind of playing the game can really take a lot of the edge off. So there's a lot of applications, how we start the shelter dogs is not any different than we would start any other dog that's just starting or coming to a class. Because the reality is a dog in a shelter is really, except for their living situation, is not much different than a dog that's in a home. It's still a dog, and it has all of the same needs and desires and drives and, challenges that any other dog might have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know here in Georgia, it's really hot and it's hard to get out. So it's definitely something that we encourage people to utilize at home to give them an outlet, because these guys in shelters don't maybe have the exercise outlet that they would if they were living with us.
And that's a big piece of it. And I know with a lot of shelters, sometimes they're just looking to get the dogs out of their kennels. And so they get them out and just cut them loose in an exercise yard or sometimes in play groups. And as great as that might be in the short term, it doesn't what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't necessarily address some of the other needs that the dog has, and it doesn't help build a relationship with people. If the dog's fun and activity is either through other dogs, and when they're dealing with people, it's all about control. So this is a good way to kind of mesh the two things together. The dog still has autonomy, and the person can have some involvement in that, helping to build some relationship there as well. And one of the other advantages that we've really noticed, not just from the dog's perspective, but because in canine nose work, we emphasize observation from the human to really learn and engage in what's happening with the dog, to step into what the dog's world as much as we possibly can as humans. And what we found is that because they're doing that in other aspects of the life that they work with the dog, they're now able to utilize those skill sets in other areas. So with reactive dogs, they're able to see something changing before they see the reaction, because they've learned to notice the minute changes of behavior that come in other areas and start applying it elsewhere. So for volunteers, it helps with their behavior observation skills that are so critical in a shelter. And for companion dog owners and sport dog owners that might have dogs with some environmental issues or reactivity, they're able to address them much more quickly. So it's a holistic thing, but it's not just the dog and it's not just the person, but it's a whole holistic process.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something about relationship. And I know for myself, it definitely increased my relationship with my first dog that I started taking through canine nose work. And it's not something I expected. And when you said it about shelter dogs, it made me pause and say, yeah, that's right. Like, obviously it would apply to them. Can you dig into that a little bit more as to how canine nose work helps with the human and dog bond?
Well, I think one of the things that we see oftentimes, and I know you probably do too, at running a lot of classes that bring in companion dog owners and sport dog owners, is a communication gap.
Mm-hmm.
The dogs are really great at understanding us and reading our communication, but we tend to not really spend a lot of time truly trying to understand what's going on with the dog from a communication standpoint. We superficially do, but there's very little that actually offers sort of, I hate using the word pet dog owner, but the average companion dog family or handler person, an opportunity to really just sit back and watch the dogs. It's always about doing something with the dog or making the dog do something. And you kind of don't have that 50,000 foot view of what's happening. And we really kind of strive to have that be a big part of it. It's not just about making the next greatest detection dog. It's about a whole entire process from foundation through, high level competition. So, I think that's a really key piece. Everything is not just isolated in its own. It's not about one piece or the other. It's the whole holistic picture.
It is, absolutely. And I think too, people not only just superficially understand their dog, but they might put things on their dog that aren't reality, like, oh, he's just being a jerk, or right. These like generalities that we kind of put on them, when the dog's just saying like, hey, like, I want to do something fun, or I'm super bored, like that's why I'm barking at you. And right. And now they're like, oh, after doing scent work with my dog's actually pretty fun to be around, right?
Well, yeah, exactly, totally. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. Yeah, you had a good thought. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's that is really one of the biggest things, is that the dogs sometimes they're not having an outlet for what they need and desire, and they build up frustration. I was just having this conversation with my family because my younger dog, who's now 6.5, he's just started like being really annoying lately. It's like, putting that on him, right? He's barking and say, like, yeah, he's bored. He's just bored. I'm not doing enough with him.
I know, he's 6.5.
Yeah, I mean, he's 6.5. He's bored. We need to do more with him. We need to engage him more. So it's, gives people the opportunity to say, hey, the dog's not just being an ass. There is an underlying, excuse my French, there's an underlying reason perhaps that, you're seeing some of this. And, so we really want it to be all encompassing. It's, canine nose work is not a fix for behavior problems, but it's a great tool or avenue to use in conjunction with things that you may be working on to give dogs outlet for all that energy and to help focus their minds a little bit, utilizing such a key piece of who they are.
Absolutely. And something we can really help them with, with canine nose work is building their confidence. So these dogs that are in the shelter, they, think about, like, if we got locked up tomorrow, we're both confident women, I think. We got locked up tomorrow and we're there for a month, we might really question our level of confidence, right?
Well, I think that's
solving
true.
Some problems,
or subsequently we might be angry. Mm-hmm. And so you end up creating behavior issues that might not necessarily have been an issue before, because of the frustration that's building up from the confinement and a lack of ability to have any say over one's own actions on a daily basis. And I think, for some of our dogs at home, we don't take that into consideration when we're also looking at frustration related, or what appears to be frustration related behaviors, or separation anxiety and all of that stuff. We kind of, I think sometimes they're sometimes caged animals in a nicer environment, right? We tell them when to eat, when to sleep, where to sleep, how to sleep, where to walk, where to poop, everything about their lives is controlled. And, I think that can lend itself to a lot of internal combustion that explodes sometimes at the wrong time. So,
absolutely.
Our goal is with something as simple as canine nose work, which you don't have to be a perfect trainer. You don't have to be a trained, clicker trainer. You don't have to have years of chops. You don't have to, it's really designed to reach the greatest number of dogs and people as possible, regardless of learning history. And I think that's a big piece of it as well.
Absolutely. And around here, I don't know how it is necessarily across the country, and that would be a great thing for people to post if you know, but most shelters in my area, dogs tend to be adolescents, so 3 and under, and think about developmentally what this can help them with if they're still teenagers, right? And they're frustrated, they're pent up energy, and now they have this outlet, even if it's not, they don't go off and compete, right? This is just giving them that outlet for learning and for bonding and things like that. So it's really, really important for people to understand what it can do.
Right. And, as we know, every age of the dog has sort of unique needs and, different levels of activity and how that's going to be utilized. But the one thing that's consistent is that there's use of their nose. And how can we utilize that in a way that is productive? And I think you're right, like for adolescent dogs, but even senior dogs, oftentimes they're old, they're tired, they don't want to do anything, or, they just rest, but they still have the same sort of needs. It just might be not to the scale a 2-year-old, Labrador retriever might have the level of energy. So
absolutely. Yeah, and any dog can do it. So that's what's amazing.
Yeah, and maybe that not every dog can compete at the highest level of competition, but the one thing is every dog, to some degree or another, can at least participate in the activity, and the activity can really be a great tool for the people to have better understanding of their dog, how their dog solves problems, and how the dog maneuvers through the world when it's not under direct human control all the time.
Absolutely. What's their preference? Yeah.
What's their preference? And I think when you understand how the dog operates, you can work within that dog's sort of mindset and use that to your advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more you see that individual, the better. And see them in different, pictures, right? Because this could be something potential adopters could come watch and get to know the dog.
Yeah, some shelters have done that too. Like they use, I know with our shelter program, we have a Yahoo group for people that come to the seminars or that work using Canine Nose Work, sort of that model within their organizations, whether shelter or rescue. And we have all kinds of things like little stickers to put on kennels. A lot of the shelters or rescue groups will take videos of the dogs doing nose work. NACSW even has a special registration system for dogs that are shelter dogs or rescue dogs with a 501c3 charity.
Okay, awesome.
They can run them through their long-term holds, and they've been there a while, and they've got them on odor now at this point. They can run them through ORTs and do different things because those are all ways to help dogs look more desirable sometimes to the public. And, as we know about people, it's about branding and marketing. It doesn't matter what it is, right?
It's so true.
Wow, this dog has an odor recognition test. I don't know what that is, but he must be special.
Exactly.
So, and it's a good way, to just kind of see what kind of dogs are out there. So, it's really a lot of fun. I love being able to share that with people.
Absolutely. What are some of the things that might prevent a shelter or rescue group from taking this on? They see the benefit, but maybe they're hesitant for some reason.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things I think tends to be kind of one of those barriers for a lot of organizations, and as somebody that was a director of a behavior department for many years, is the idea that this is a really good idea, but I just don't have the resources. I don't have the staff, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you're just trying to get through your day, making sure the animals are well taken care of, their base needs are met.
Right.
And sometimes the extracurricular stuff is not a priority.
Sure.
But what we found is, though, that some of the shelters that are doing it and bringing it in as part of, a fun activity for the volunteers or staff or whatever, it's actually helped some of their workload because some of the dogs that have been challenging or bored in the kennels, problematic, or they don't know what to do with some dogs, it's given them an opportunity to have this other outlet. And in the beginning, it doesn't take much but some cardboard boxes and some treats, really, or a toy if that's what the dog likes. Odor is not a part of it in the beginning because we're really just building some of the foundational skills of problem solving anyway, just like with our classes. Right. So the resources are minimal, and we really encourage, canine nosework, official canine nosework instructors, CNWI, ANWI, and prospective instructors, if there's a shelter or rescue group that they like to work with, to partner with them and just be their mentor. You don't have to be there every day volunteering, but you can help be a, supporting voice, maybe do, little demos for the volunteers and staff. So, there's different ways that they can utilize it. But I'd say the biggest challenge and sometimes the biggest frustration as a shelter worker is when somebody comes in, like they've got some miracle thing.
Right.
I'm a dog trainer and I'm going to come and help you. And then all you're thinking of is like, oh my God, this is going to cost me time. It's great that you want to help, but sometimes the help actually is not as helpful as sometimes people think it is. So I think that's oftentimes the biggest roadblock. And I often recommend that people just go in and offer to volunteer, not do anything special. Like, don't say I'm bringing this program to you.
Right.
Just go offer your services. And when you see how things operate and what they really need, you can, then start doing things that, might give them some alternatives.
So build that relationship first. That's really smart.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other things that I have found really interesting is when some shelters that are doing still behavior evaluations, just even as a baseline, whether, not necessarily whether they go for adoption or not, but just an information baseline for their dogs, have found that when you use sort of the canine nosework model as at least an adjunct, you get a little bit more detailed information about who the dog is. Because when an animal has to sort of problem solve on their own, you get to see how they really think and operate.
And can they even function, right? Like to start, like, can you even think in this environment?
I know, exactly. And what's so great is when you go into a shelter and they'll say, like, these two dogs came in together and dog A is like, he's the confident one and blah, 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 blah. And, dog B is maybe not so confident, dog A is the one that, and then all of a sudden you separate them and you put them in a situation in which you're like, here, dog, let's play some games. We're going to let you figure this out. And all of a sudden you see the reverse. And oftentimes the people in the shelter are like, we did not see that coming. So it's fun too, because you get to really understand who the individual dog is. So that's a fun. It's a puzzle to me. It's like for me, it's a puzzle, just like we try to set up puzzles for the dogs. So it's awesome. Right.
Yeah, totally. Because you're just trying to figure out who that individual is.
Exactly.
In that moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's great. And what's also great is the people is seeing the light bulb go off for people, because we're always, as dog people, sometimes we're so hyper focused on the dog piece of things that we neglect the human piece. And, we blame the people when things don't work out. And, I think we need to also readjust how we approach people in relation to the dogs that they're working with, whether it's their own personal dog or the dogs in the shelter or whatnot. And it's always fun when, you see those light bulbs go off and somebody's kind of been sucked into the whole set work world. Once
they're hooked, right?
It's like a geek fest, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
and I've seen this actually too in we have some jail dog programs here in Georgia.
Oh, good.
And so I don't know if they've continued with it, the local one, but when I was volunteering, that was something that they had put in because they were allowed, this specific unit was allowed to have boxes. And that was something that, this type of program could be introduced to that as well, not just the shelters and the rescues, because they are technically a rescue, raising these dogs, if you will,
right,
for the public.
Right. And he gives, it's a, and when I was in my shelter days, I worked on a program that was a program designed for at-risk youth, in which we paired them with shelter dogs, and they spent, 3 weeks or a month partnered with a shelter dog, and they trained the dogs. And I really wish that we had something like this when I started, because I think the opportunity to just allow observation time for the person.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were working with 13-year-olds. So it would have been it would have been great if at that earlier phase that this was sort of more established then.
Right.
I think that there's so many great ways to apply this that they give people an opportunity just to stand back and I was thinking about, what is that I love about like sort of working with dogs in this capacity. And I said, I feel like it's the closest thing to sort of being a part of, I don't know what the right word is without sounding hokey dokey about it, but it's kind of not ethereal, but you have this sort of supernatural connection when you really are watching an individual work within their natural abilities, what is just given to them by Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
And being a part of that, I think it kind of separates you and elevates you out of the everyday life of what it sometimes is to have a dog, and you kind of get a whole different perspective. It's
right.
It's kind of my hokey dokey kind of.
But I don't think it's hokey dokey. Anyone who's seen, week 1, intro to nose work, and week 6 intro to nose work, even in the same day, right? They get it. They go, oh my gosh, that dog did XYZ, which had never done before, right? Or didn't blow up, or these things that you're just like, it is magic. It feels like magic. When you see them, be them.
I know, it's like people are like, oh, I'm like, and when you've seen it enough times, I'm still excited, when a dog comes in and I'm like, oh God, I don't know what I'm going to do. And here this dog's not functioning. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, the dog's like, oh yeah, I got this. And you're like, oh, and everybody's like, yay. It's such a great, it's such a great thing. But it's when you're watching the dog and you're really observing what's happening, it's almost as if you can see what they're seeing or smelling. It's as close as we're ever going to get to seeing air.
Mm-hmm. And it's really fascinating to see people who have no experience get it without totally explaining it. Like they see it. It's like it's something that is in us that's connected to them, but you don't even have to explain it, right?
Well, I think human sort of society has kind of become so isolated from our connection to animals, and actually working with animals in a way that's mutually beneficial, in which we really have to read and watch them, because what they do could be life or death for us. Hunting, protection, livestock, whatever the case is, and we've become further and further isolated from that. This is an opportunity for people to sort of experience that, because I think it's part of who we are. We are a natural creature as well. So I think it gives us an opportunity to really connect with that piece again when Absolutely. You have that opportunity to watch the dog. So it's, to me, it's the most fun I've had. I've worked with dogs for so many years, like I told you, since I was 2.
Since you were 2.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But it really is. When you've worked with dogs, sometimes on the very extreme scale, and their life is going to be really shrunk down, or potentially they're not going to leave the shelter ever.
Right.
That can really weigh heavy. And and I love doing all kinds of things. I've played in agility, and I've played all kinds of stuff, but there's something really special about watching an individual animal that's not your same species work in as natural a way as we possibly can allow them and still be safe.
Right.
And then morphing that and shaping it over time into something that's in an even bigger connection when we actually start working with, the odors and doing searches together, when the handler is now reliant on the dog for information, in which they have to now give that information to another third party. Like, that's an amazing piece. So, I just, it's really awesome. I mean, I hope other people have as much fun as I do. I think they are. So,
just a little bit.
It's kind of like I said, it's a nosework geek fest. So
it is. It totally is. When you get it, and I think more and more people get it now, but it does take some time because people are so held into that. I'm the boss of the dog. I'm going to tell them what to do. They need to listen to me, and it's like, but. Right. they have needs too. And especially these dogs who may have never had communication with people on that level in the past. You know,
Exactly.
they never had, they were a backyard dog, or, you know, they were the kid's dog, and they never had that opportunity to go, wow, I can use my abilities and these people really enjoy it. It's weird.
Exactly. So, you know, I mean, it's just a little bit of, it is a little bit of magic, I guess, when you get an opportunity to do that, right? And
Mhm.
we don't get a lot of magic in our everyday lives. So.
Absolutely. No, we don't.
No, so it's a yeah, it's been a real I think it's kind of, you know, I don't know, it's just like kind of get all goofy, but I just love it. I love watching the dogs and I love watching the people.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know how somebody can be a dog trainer and, you know, yeah, we all get frustrated with people from time to time, but when people tell me that they don't like people, and like, how can you work with dogs, you know, and, like,
Yeah.
and not like the people? Because they are a 50% of the, you know, the relationship.
Yep.
So, you know, maybe it's just that I find people amusing, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It depends, right?
It depends.
That's always the right answer.
That's right. You can't go wrong with that answer.
So, you know, what are some things that people would need to know if they were going to try to recruit some volunteers? Is there anything specific people, you know, need to know from just a gathering standpoint, or what knowledge people do need?
I think it's always helpful, you know, whenever you're going to have volunteers working directly with dogs, especially in a shelter where you have minimal um, knowledge about the dog, even owner surrenders, because sometimes people surrendering their dogs are so worried about the outcomes that they aren't always as forthright as you need them to be to help
Right.
have a safe placement. So, you know, is having, at least initially, having your volunteers that have some experience working with dogs, and knowing the dogs that you're having them work with, because you are working in a close proximity with dogs.
Mhm.
You know, you want to make sure you're not you don't have dogs with serious food aggression issues and resource guarding that may have been unidentified. You need to have a little bit of background on what's going on there.
Mhm.
But other than that, you don't need to, you know, you don't need to be a trained trainer. You don't need to be, you know, clicker savvy. The dog doesn't need to be, you know, clicker savvy. It doesn't need any of that. You can just take a dog out of the kennel and start working them and getting them in, you know, sort of getting them out of that mindset of being in the shelter a little bit, without it being about control and obedience or just running amok, you know, where it's just they're running
Right.
loose. So it's kind of a middle ground for the shelters. So I think that would probably be the biggest thing, really, is to just, you know, work with your volunteers initially that have the most experience really watching and observing dogs.
And so they might need, you know, if a person who loves nose work, who's not a dog trainer, they might have to reach out to someone to maybe assess the dogs ahead of time. If the shelter that wasn't there, you know, they're not assessing them for certain things like aggression towards people or resource guarding, that kind of thing.
I just noticed a couple of comments. I don't know if I can adjust.
Okay. Yeah, totally. Go for it.
Somebody was saying, you know, are donations okay? And I always suggest that, you know, find a local shelter in your area and donate to your local shelters. There's a lot of national organizations out there, and you know they do good work, but often our local humane societies, SPCA's, and other shelter organizations are sort of overlooked because people have a misconception that if you donate to a large nationally known organization that somehow that money trickles down to the local organizations, and that's not the case. So if you have a local SPCA or humane society, they are not getting funds from whatever national organization is generally out there, except maybe there's special granting. Right. So I would always recommend, you know, doing that. We've had for one or two shelters had sponsorships that covered the expenses and cost for having a shelter workshop at just for their people. So that's another thing that people can do. But I always advocate for supporting your local shelters and getting to know them, even if you don't have time to volunteer on a regular basis. Get to know who's out there, And sometimes the places that look the most beat up and ragamuffin kind of thing, are actually doing the better work in some ways, because it's really about the people that are inside the building, not the way the building looks.
Right.
So really go in and check on what's going on. And that would just be my suggestion. I just wanted to acknowledge that comment.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have some other comments more of just saying, why it's so amazing. Just love and unconditional love for dogs. Because I think the people who are here are already into it,
Yeah, I know, right?
They're already hooked.
And thank you guys for jumping in. We really appreciate the comments. And,
Absolutely.
I think it is really amazing. And there's a lot of really great people out there doing some really great work out in sheltering. And, I always suggest, checking that out as well. We're still in this country. We still have a lot of animals that need good placements. There's a lot of really good animals out there too. Hopefully people will take an opportunity to visit shelters, and because there might be the right dog for them sitting out there waiting for them. So
absolutely, yes, and get them started right away on Canine Knows Work.
Yeah, and that's the great thing, if they come home or they're a little sick and, you need to burn off some energy, it's like you just need a few boxes and, like I said, some of their treats, and just start playing the game. It's, it's not particularly, it doesn't require a ton of stuff to get started. So I think, like with most things, the hardest thing is the first getting started.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, and if people say, well, you need this, and you should do this, and you got to take this class, people are like, forget that.
They're like, what? How long till this? Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, you guys make sure to ask any questions or put any comments here. You can do it now, and this will be recorded, so you'll see it later as well. So we'll keep in contact to see what's going on. But it's so interesting that, this program can provide so much. It's just a few people need to take the effort to, build community around these organizations to make it possible.
Right. Exactly. I just saw a comment pop up.
Go for it. I'll put it up in the front so everyone can see it too.
Yeah, it says, I have been doing Canine Knows Work at Humane Study where I volunteer. How long of a session do you think is a good amount for the dogs?
Great question.
It's an awesome question. And I think, I've done everything from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. Usually probably not more than a half hour, depending on what we're doing and the experience level of the dog. I think for most dogs that are not conditioned very well because they've been sitting in a kennel, or, they have other sort of emotional turmoil going on that takes up some energy as well. Usually 10 to 15 minutes is going to, take a little of the edge off for the dog. And it's probably pretty good for right in the beginning. But if it's a dog, at home, you could do 5 minutes, do 1 or 2 quick little puzzles or little searches. You could do a puzzle and then a regular, just free search, different things to mix it up. But I would say 10 to 15 minutes on average is usually what I have done in the past.
And how do you keep track of, let's say the shelter environment, whoever's running the Canine Knows Work activity, how would they keep track of what to do next, right? Because you might have a new dog that you do just, a line of boxes, and then you have a dog who's been doing it for 4 weeks that can handle more.
So one of the things that I did, whether it was just regular training, or behavior work sessions or nose work, is I always kept training logs for all the dogs. And either that or we kept a smaller version on the kennels themselves so that volunteers that were coming in can see where things were at for that dog and they can read it. And then we had a computer system. We could input notes so we were able to keep track of what we were doing sort of in both places. And then whoever might be coming in next to do something could kind of get an idea of what we had been working on previously with the dog, or a volunteer might have been working on with that particular dog. So I think, if you can put that, have that handy, it's really helpful for people just to track. And, when I do the workshops, like the shelter workshop that I'm going to do at your place in August. So if anybody's interested, make sure you check out the website.
Absolutely. I'll put it in the links down below.
Yeah. Well, we talk a little bit about that, about tracking, and I show a little bit of what I did, but obviously you need to make it so it's suitable for whatever group you're working with.
Right, just be organized about it.
Exactly. I just see another question. What is an ideal space to do nose work in? Inside space in my shelter. Can nose work be done safely in and out? Yeah, we've had people, here's the thing. When you're dealing with shelter dogs, sometimes you have to just work with whatever space you have available. And it may mean that instead of doing an off-leash searches, you do something on a long line in just as secure an area as you possibly can. You want to try and be away from the dogs in the kennels if you can, even if it means, in a hallway. And, we've had people, do all kinds of things. So
gotta be creative a little bit.
You have to be a little creative,
Smaller boxes.
Smaller boxes. Yeah. But, a lot of shelters, that's also another, when you were asking before about challenges or obstacles, it's space availability. So, again, like I've said, we've had people that have just done, sessions in hallways, office space, outside in the parking lot, as long as the dog's on a line and it's safe. The best, if you can, just away from where other dogs are kennelled, because we obviously don't want to build frustration in the kennel dogs either. Right. So, and one of the big elements with canine nose work, it's a one dog at a time sort of environment where we don't have dogs waiting nearby, watching the dog working, or having the dog working, worrying about another dog nearby.
Right.
If it's possible, do that. Somebody that volunteers at a shelter in my area, she only works mostly with small dogs because that's what she can really handle. And they have very limited space. And she just had to use the kennel area and put all the dogs outside and then just work the little dogs inside. That's really not ideal. But guess what? It was fine for what they needed. And it got the dogs out of their kennels and some one-on-one time with people. And really the biggest thing is not having other dogs watching the dog working, so that it is still maintained sort of a one dog at a time thing. Right. But just,
pressure off for them.
Be creative. I mean, Amy and I, we ran classes in a parking lot that was just fenced in for not a shelter class, but just a regular nose work class in just a parking lot that was just fenced. And we just became creative to bring new things into that environment to create right. novelty. So, you just kind of, it brings out the creative juices, let's say. So hopefully that answered your question, Anthony.
Yep, that was a really good question. And it looks like John actually reminded him to get in contact with this local shelter. This is a good reminder, too, that we need to reach out and offer support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to get to see John, I think, soon, because he's on the other side of the world. So, hi, John.
Well, I'm glad you could tune in. That was a good reminder.
Yeah, exactly. yes, get into the shelter and play with those dogs. So, yeah, it's great.
It's a great way to build community, too.
I know.
And other people to come in and see these dogs and talk about them.
I know. It's like I've been saying, I really want to start getting some time again to work in a shelter here locally again. It's like I'm like, I want to actually get out and play. So I'm always excited when I get to do a shelter dog thing and get to see some of the dogs in the shelter. And take tour. It's always fun.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because you want to just help more dogs, right? That's right. More dogs and more people.
And for those canine nose work specific instructors out there, the CNWI and ANWI, if you're able to do it and you can find the time, offer a session for volunteers in a shelter and the staff. Even if it's that they can't do anything right away, you kind of just get them thinking about something else. So I'm just, it's just a lot of fun. It's a great way for staff. I think sometimes the paid staff in shelters, get burnt out because it's, sort of a daily grind and
monotonous.
And if they have an opportunity to do something different, that's just about having fun or playing with the dogs and not worrying about two dogs getting into a fight in the play yard and, all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's kind of a nice outlet for them too.
Yeah, because they tend to be stretched thin. So if other people can come in or they can do that for fun, that's a good opportunity for them
absolutely,
too.
Absolutely. So
John's in Australia. Okay. That makes sense. Awesome. Any other questions while we have Jill Marie live? I'll talk a little bit while we are waiting for any questions or feedback. So she's coming here in August. We're super excited. She's not just talking about the shelter project. She's talking about many things. So that's the 17th of August that we're doing the shelter project, and it is going to benefit a local rescue group that's amazing. They primarily focus on Boston Terriers, but they have helped out with Great Pyrenees and German Shepherds and kind of whatever else comes along. And they work with a lot of special needs dogs. So I think this is phenomenal. And they've brought lots of their dogs to our nose work classes to help them build confidence and have a job and get that enrichment. And then on Sunday, we have 2 different topics. We only have audit spots available because the working spots got grabbed up right away. But in the morning, we're talking about containers, thinking outside the box. Sometimes we start in containers and then we get away from them when we get higher level, and then we don't have the experience, I think is what I see. And then in the afternoon, we're talking about NW3 challenges and higher. So things that are coming up, once you're starting to compete at higher levels that we need to work on. So I'm excited to see how Jill Marie is going to do some problem solving with these teams. We have some great teams lined up. So hopefully you guys can join us. We still have audit spots as well. And finally, for the shelter plug, it is $100 a person. But if you are a group, you don't even have to be a certain kind of group. You can just get together a bunch of friends. 5 or more, it's $75 a person. So all of the
that's awesome.
Anything outside of our expenses for that day is going to go to Rescue Ranch. So it's a really good reason to do it, and we're glad that they'll be involved with it because they do really good work. So we do have a question. Let me pop that up here for you. How and when can we access the recording of this awesome hour? Well, later today or early tomorrow, I just have to download it and I'll distribute it accordingly. But yes, and you can share it. It will be live on the Facebook page long term, but it'll get onto YouTube and wherever Jill Marie wants to use it so that more people can learn about this awesome program.
Definitely. As soon as it's available and ready, I'll also share it with we have a Canine Nosework Shelter Project Facebook page. So you can
make sure to go like it.
Yeah, go like that, please. And we'll put it there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
So I could talk about nosework forever. So it's kind of it's my kind of it's my fun time.
Totally, yeah, it totally should be. You should really enjoy it when you get to do it.
Yeah,
because it helps. It helps so many, and it's fun, as you've said, and just really letting dogs be dogs. Which you're right, we don't do it nearly enough, even if we're in that mindset.
And the thing that I always try to remind people of too is some of the dogs that we have even in the NACSW on the sports side at the highest levels were shelter and rescue dogs. Mm-hmm. So, let's not underestimate what their future potential is. Because I think we sort of don't think about what potential is. We just see what's sitting there in front of us. And I think a lot of these dogs have so much potential that's just untapped. And, I hope, people take an opportunity to get out there and just, see what's out there. And, it's a lot of fun. That's all I can say. Just go have some fun with your dogs.
Well, and something to think about too is, if people are interested in doing things with their dog and they don't know what to look for in a, rescue or shelter dog, is to bring a professional with them. If it's specific to nosework, bring your nosework instructor with you, right? But
that's a great idea.
You can go with a professional to say, these are your challenges, but then these are the things that are really going to be great for this dog to find the right match. Because a lot of times that's why they ended up in the shelter in the first place, is they weren't in the right home. It wasn't that they were a bad dog.
That's a great, suggestion. And, to invest a little bit in hiring, a professional, or if you're working with somebody that you've had with your other dog, to, just, take them with you, like you said, to help narrow down, mm-hmm. What might be a good match for a family, because it'll help. It's sort of like if you ever watch like the TV shows, where people are searching for new houses, take your friends with you, so you don't just do it on impulse and emotion. You got to be there for a while. So a dog's going to be with you hopefully for a really long time, and having somebody there is, I think, a really great idea. That's a great suggestion.
Absolutely. And that applies to all ages of dogs, because I adopted a 9-year-old dog. I didn't want a senior dog at the time, and I had young dogs. And that dog, lived to be 15. Got lots of life out of that little dog.
And, somebody just posted, I see Cindy posted, at our rescue shelters still able to get a shelter number on a dog if they are ready for an ORT. Yes. And if you're not sure, you can always email Shelter Project. I'm hoping I'm remembering the email, because it's like one of those things that I just do. It's like going to a place you go to. It's shelterproject@caninenoswork.com. And it sometimes takes a few days for folks to get back, but we can send you some information on that as well.
And that would be great for volunteers who, maybe they can't have another dog, and they want to work a dog in the beginning levels.
Right.
It's really fun to see that develop once you've done it once with a dog, and then you're like, well, I can't have another dog. You could go work another dog up to that level.
That's exactly it. And for those folks in the instructor certification program that are looking sometimes, because they need to do an ORTA on a dog as part of their requirements, utilize a rescue or a shelter that might be willing to put a dog on loan for you to do that. And there's always so many different ways that you can help yourself and also help a shelter dog. So, and the more we know about the dogs, the more time we spend with them, the better we can place them into the right environments.
Absolutely.
So that they can be successful. So, because it's all about relationships.
It is. Absolutely. Good questions.
Excellent.
All
Thanks,
right.
you guys, for jumping in.
Yeah, totally. Because there's so many things that we wouldn't have thought of, and we want to make sure people are getting the most out of this time together.
Absolutely.
So, Jill Marie, is there anything in the last 5 minutes that you feel like we haven't touched on that you really want to bring up, or maybe go back and emphasize that we need to, bold print?
I think the biggest thing is that, as I always want to emphasize, as it relates to Canine Nose Work specifically, is it's really designed to reach, especially the foundational phase, the building block phase, as many dogs and people as possible. It's, we want to encourage people to have, take the time to work with their dogs in a way that they're able to kind of see how their dog operates and communicates when they're sort of left to their own devices, and utilize that to help build an even stronger relationship than you already have with your dog. And I think if we can do that with our own dogs and share a little bit of that with the dogs still waiting for their forever homes, I think we can really, we can make big changes. And, there's a lot of people out there doing really good work too. So if you get a chance, look for what other people are doing. There's a lot of dynamic projects and programs out there. And if shelter dogs and rescues are something you're interested in, I say, go for it. And, there's organizations like the APDT, Association of Professional Dog Trainers, that offer a lot of and conferences and educational events. I always recommend that people go that route as well.
Absolutely. The more we can learn, the more we can help.
Exactly. Education is power.
It is. We just have to apply it.
That's a whole nother conversation.
I know, yeah. For another day. Well, this has been amazing. I so appreciate your time, Jill Marie, and I'm so excited for you to be here in Georgia. It'll be a little toasty, but we'll make sure to keep you hydrated.
Yes, I need to be reminded. I live in California. It could be 117 in the summer here, and I'm like, gotta drink that water.
Yes, absolutely. Big time. But we so look forward to it. I'll post in the comments the link to both the Shelter Dog Facebook page and the sign up to come to any of the seminar stuff we have coming.
Awesome.
And, if you're not local, make sure to look up on the NACSW's website a local instructor. It's the best information out there. And we want to make sure that you have fun with your dog learning all these wonderful things. So thank you guys so much.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right. See you in August.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.